And welcome on in to the latest edition of the Blue Horseshoe Podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey, back for the third time this week. George, don't let anyone ever tell you there is such a thing as an offseason in the NFL. This week, if anything, should hammer that home. This is a big week, George, because today's we're recording this on Wednesday. It was the final media session for OTAs. The optional period for Colts players is wrapping up this week. Mandatory minicamp is next week. So the end of the offseason is rapidly approaching, and now we're seeing the end of voluntary workouts. And also today was a big day, George, because today was the first day coaches and players were made available after the big-time news of Isaiah Rodgers being investigated by the NFL for placing at least 100 bets, some including the Colts. So you were out at practice today, George. You're able to talk to a few players and Shane Steichen. What were they saying? What was kind of the message, especially after this, I'm going to assume, shocking revelation that Isaiah Rodgers got busted and is facing a big-time penalty? What was kind of the mood around the Colts today? What were they kind of saying after their final OTA session?
Yeah, practice was business as usual as far as that goes. I think team's pretty good. Every team in the league's pretty good about moving on in that regard. Go out there and get your work done. And even last year when all the circus was in town, I think the games and the practices were that's where you get away from it. That's your sort of safe space if you're a player. Get out there on the field and you can just worry about football. And then as soon as you get back in the locker room, you can worry about everything else that's going on. Shane Steichen pretty much said what we expected him to say. If you listen to the emergency pod on the other night, if you didn't, go check it out. Still out there.
What are you doing?
Yes, absolutely. Get in there and hear our incredible thoughts. But Shane Steichen had nothing to say. It was essentially investigations ongoing, and other than that, pretty much no comment, which I think we saw coming. But EJ Speed was interesting today. Basically saying, don't take the chance. It's not worth it. In his mind, he's not really a gambler anyway. But his whole point was, don't even get close to the line because ultimately the potential penalties here are far worse than any gain that you're probably going to get from this. I think it's probably a good way of approaching this. I think you probably see a lot of players do that. But otherwise, pretty normal day out there. I think the next big thing for them will be when a decision finally comes down. When the investigation's finished and we know what suspension is going to be, I think that's when the team's going to have to react to that. But Steichen did say he felt like, in this league, when these things happen, you always just kind of have to put it behind you and move on. And he thought the players were doing a pretty good job of that so far.
Shane Steichen giving you nothing. I'm shocked, George. No answers whatsoever. I am totally shocked. So I'm gonna assume the answer is no, but I'm gonna ask the question anyway. Was there any sort of timeline given of when the Colts expect a decision to be made?
No. The only thing that I think is kind of been gleaned in the last couple of days that we didn't know when we did the emergency pod is it does sound like the team really just found out about this recently. I don't know if it was at the same time everybody else did when the reports came out, but it sounds like they didn't know back in April. When we had speculated maybe when they drafted these corners, they had that in mind. It does not sound like that was the case. That was just because they were already thin at that position, which is why nobody really looked at it sideways when it happened. But it doesn't look like it's something that they've known for a while. So it's new information that we didn't have the last time we had a problem.
And I think EJ Speed is we're not going to obviously rehash a lot of what we did. Because again, if you missed it, the emergency pod we did on Monday night after Isaiah Rodgers, it was put out there and he confirmed to himself with basically an apology that he has been investigated, or being investigated, I should say, for gambling on games, including Colts games. I think EJ Speed is right. It's like one of those things, George, where NFL players right now, the rules are you can't gamble inside the facility and you can't gamble on any NFL game, especially your own. You are allowed to gamble on college football, on the NBA, on baseball, but from the luxury of your own home, or not anywhere on the practice field, in the facility, in the hotel room, if you're traveling for an away game. Basically, any team sanctioned area, you can't gamble on. But if you're at home, you can do it. But I think EJ Speed is right in the sense, I just don't, especially if you're a player, don't see really the end goal of being a positive. First of all, you look at the sharps, George, the best people that gamble are at 57%. barely eclipsing, getting some money back. So it's like even the pros that do this are barely, scratching the surface in terms of getting more right than wrong. Most people lose. So it's like just a losing proposition, number one. And two, with Isaiah Rodgers' situation, it's going to cost him a lot more than just a few dollars loss on a bet. It's going to maybe cost him a career, bare minimum, millions of dollars. And it's one of those things where it should be kind of viewed as like as almost like steroids. Like when players get busted for steroids now, right, in any sport, what's usually the first thing they say? Oh, I had no idea. It was in a supplement I was taking. I promise this was just, I swear I had no idea it was in there. But the reason why that excuse never holds up anymore, George, is because getting an answer is simple. Hey, I'm taking this new supplement. Look at these ingredients. Is there anything on the ban list, or am I good to take it before you take it? And you get your answer, and either, you come back, the team usually does it, say good to go, or hey, no, here's an alternative. It's the same thing with gambling. If you have any doubt, George, it's simple as, oh, am I allowed to bet on NFL games if it's not my own team? Maybe before I do it, I should ask someone just in case, because if you see Calvin Ridley and the year-long suspension he got, I don't want that to happen to me. So I'm just going to double check if I have to gamble and I really want to put my money and make, earn an extra side, whatever, earn some extra money on the side. I really got to gamble. Let's just make sure I'm doing it right. Like it's as simple as it is. But I think EJ Speed, George, nailed on the head. It's just not worth it. When you're an active player, it's just, I think at this point, not worth running the risk whatsoever.
No, I mean, if you want to bet, if Ryan Kelly and Sam Ellinger want to bet on the Texas-Alabama game last year, that's fine. You can do that. One of you buys the other one dinner or whatever. That's not the extent of it. If I'm a player, that's probably where it ends right there. I'll bet on my alma mater, defend them in the locker room. Beyond that, nothing else really seems like you're going to get any kind of benefit out of it. One thing that I think we were talking about before we started to record, Kevin Bowen and Jake Query do a great job here on the local radio. They had Zaire Smith on the other day, or Zaire Franklin on the other day. Zaire said, basically, their don't know what a sports book is. And we had evidence of that today in front of us. I mean, Zach Moss came up there and basically said, I don't really care about the rules because I don't really know enough about gambling. It's not a hobby. It's not something I'm going to run afoul of. Kylan Grantham is something very similar that, it's really not something that they're really well versed in. And I think that there's a possibility that Isaiah Rodgers got caught up here on a phone app and maybe didn't realize the full extent of the rules that he was breaking. But as you just said with the steroid guys, it doesn't matter. It's no excuse. Call your agent. If there's any question at all, if it's anywhere near an area that you might not be needing to dip your toes in, call your agent. Hey, I've got this app. I was going to bet on the NFL games. Should I do that? And even if you take that at face value, even if that's the defense that eventually comes out, don't do it in the facility. Don't bet on league games and don't bet on your own team. There's just so many things here that are going to pile up on him. And look, on the one hand, you feel bad for a guy who the penalty is going to be so severe. And I get it. You look at Deshaun Watson, what's going on over there. That's a much more serious offense, and he's playing and everything's fine. That's life. That's the way it is. I can be speeding. I'm going 70 and a 60, and I get pulled over. The guy that flew by me at 90 is still going. That's life. That's what happens. I think the severity here, part of me, I said it on the emergency pod, there's a heartbreaking aspect here that a guy's career could be over or certainly stalled at the very least, over what's just a dumb mistake. But at the end of the day, like you said, the information's available. Ask somebody, make sure what you're doing is okay before you do it.
You've already seen evidence, again, of players getting severely punished or a player getting severely punished. And it's not like one of these third string guys where it's okay, you write him off. He's a year-long suspension. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Calvin Ridley's a big name. So it's not like one of those things where it's, oh, wow, like, that message doesn't get home. It should get, driven home to anyone with any sort of doubt. And like you said, George, before, even if you really think, okay, on my phone, maybe it's different than me walking into a casino or walking to Vegas and putting $100 bet on the Colts. If it's on my phone, it's different. Again, especially in this case, it's always better to ask for permission than it is for forgiveness. So the opposite of that saying works a lot in life, right? It's better to kind of break the rules and try to apologize instead of getting shut down right away. In this case, George, that is not the way you should operate. Asking for forgiveness after the fact does not work because we've seen with the NFL, they don't care. And they will suspend you. They don't care about your sob story. They don't care that you thought it was innocent. They will lay down the hammer. And I thought you made a great point the other night on the emergency pod of the fact that we could see so far the precedent is 1 year. Right? If you're betting on NFL games, it's 1 year. That was Calvin Ridley. The other Lions players that were or are being suspended 6 games, that came out about a month ago. They were betting on college football, but betting in the facility. That's why they got in trouble, but not on NFL games. That's why the penalty is less severe. But you look at the case of Isaiah Rodgers right now. He was betting on NFL games, betting on the Colts. And I didn't see this, but you've said it, so I think it's true. He was in the facility for different bets as well. 3-headed monster. I mean, if the NFL wants to come down hard, George, like you mentioned before, I think it's a great point. They could say 1 year for betting in the facility, 1 year for betting on NFL games, 1 year for betting on your team, 3 strikes. Either you're out or 3 years and basically ending his career either way. We could see an unprecedented punishment come down because we've never seen a player bet on his own team and bet on the game he is playing in. Right. It could be catastrophic for his career going forward whenever we do find out the official punishment from the NFL and whenever they do confirm, and right now it's an investigation, whenever they do confirm that it was Isaiah and everything that is being right now speculated is true.
Yeah, if this investigation confirms the reports, I would expect it to be an unprecedented punishment. Whatever it is, I don't know. If it's 2 years, if it's a year and a half, it's going to be longer than Ridley got, I would imagine. Now, that too, I mean, you got to be careful. With the NFL, you're always flipping a coin when we're talking about punishments. But logic tells you it's going to be longer than anything we've seen before for one of these offenses because it goes further than any of these other offenses. And it's heartbreaking to see a guy, in jeopardy over what's, at the end of the day, just a really dumb decision. But that happens in life. You see it all the time. I hate that we even have to talk about it, to be honest. I hate that it's even a topic. But that's where we are. I do think, spinning it towards the football side of things, it's going to be interesting to see what the Colts do, in that defensive secondary. But I also think, look, Rodgers is a really popular guy, especially on social media. For one thing, he's a great kid. It's fun to be around. His personality, I think, comes through. He's well liked by people who follow this team closely. And there are a lot of folks, have a positive opinion of him because of the way he plays and the person that he is. But we don't know. He was going to be in line to be a starter this year. We don't know what that was going to look like. It was a huge opportunity for him. It would have been fun to watch that play out, see how he grew and how it worked out. But this isn't Stephon Gilmore trade all over again. This isn't a situation where you're losing an absolutely proven commodity. And that's why I think it's okay if the team goes with the younger guys and takes that look at them. First of all, the expectations for this season are not very high right now. I think that's pretty safe to say. You're not talking Super Bowl around here right now, to say the least. But secondly, I think in a lot of positions this year, they seem to be taking the approach of let's get guys out there that we believe in, that we think have talent, let them make their mistakes and see, basically put deposits in the bank, see if this pays off for us down the road.
I'm 1,000,000% with you because, again, we've said it a bunch, so I'm going to hammer it home again here. The record for the Colts in 2023 does not matter. And that's mostly the case because of Anthony Richardson. But you look in the secondary, outside of Kenny Moore, especially a defensive back like corner, they are extremely inexperienced, extremely young. And that's also why the timing it lines up perfectly. Let them make mistakes, right? There's no reason to get a free agent corner come in here for a year or so and then have him leave to sign somewhere else. Because what does that actually do? Like, now is a perfect time, whether Isaiah Rodgers is going to play or not. You got to use both those outside corner spots to hopefully, you fingers crossed, find at least one guy, but you hope 2 or 3 that could be here for the long haul. And as the Colts start to get competitive 2, 3, 4 years, like, those are some of the mainstay corner pieces on your defense, or cornerstone guys on your defense, I should say. And that's why, like I said, especially, and we'll get to like the depth chart here in a second of who was kind of replacing Isaiah Rodgers at OTAs today. But it's one of those things where you look at, obviously, some of the rookies right now are banged up. Juju Brent's not been out there, but that's a guy you expect to get a lot of run this year. And good, rightfully so. Let him try to see what he can do, get his toes wet. Dallas Flowers, a guy that's going to have to, get a chance to earn it. Tony Brown, earn it. And again, if they stink, okay, that's fine. That's okay, because again, it does not matter if this team wins 3 games, 7 games, it's all the same. And so use this kind of testing year, basically, maybe the best way I could put it, as a chance to kind of see what you got with the young guys, getting a stopgap, a 1-year guy just to come in, eat up a lot of snaps, but then is going to leave in a year or so and go somewhere else. Literally, George, does you no good. No good whatsoever. So now that, we're going to assume, right, bare minimum, Isaiah Rodgers is not going to play in 2023. So that's starting spot, right? Bare minimum, that starting spot now is going to be gone and up for grabs. And it should be fought for guys on the roster. Colts, drafted 3, right, defensive backs in this past draft. Let him fight for it. Maybe, again, another second, third-year guy in Dallas Flowers, let him earn it too. But there should be no, I would say, outside help, especially outside veteran help coming on in, because I don't really see how that benefits the Colts moving forward here, because this year especially is about who can stay on for the future versus who kind of got to offload it and kind of retool a few positions.
If they want to make a signing similar to the Rashad Perryman signing, I might listen to that. Bring somebody in to have the same impact in the cornerback group that he's having on the wide receivers. Make that person earn that last spot, but also be a guy who could impart some of that wisdom. But I think it's so important to me. I really would not want to see these young guys losing a lot of snaps right now. I think that's what it comes down to. I think that's the bottom line. Julius Brents is probably going to get – it looks like he's going to be a starter. He doesn't just completely collapse. I think they drafted him for a reason in the second round. His size, his athletic profile, he fits this defense really well. I think the expectation all along was that he would probably be a starter in this defense. And then beyond that, whether it's Dallas Flowers, whether it's a guy like Darrell Baker, whether it's Darius Rush, who's injured right now as well, just great opportunity for those guys. And let them, like you said, let them compete. Let them go through training camp, let them earn that spot, and then let them make their mistakes. And at the end of the day, if you end up with Marvin Harrison Jr. because of the way this season went, it's a victory all the way around.
That's a great point. I'm with you. I'm totally with you. And two, especially we see at corner too, that's one of the positions that's really tough to adjust from college to the NFL. And we see guys like the learning curve is a lot steeper. Especially when you talk about just the level of talent you got to guard now, and playing corner is basically impossible. Anyway, George, honestly, I don't know why any kid decides, oh yeah, let me go play defense where the rules are against me, where all the money's on the offensive side anyway. Let me go try to shut these guys down. I give a lot of credit to guys who want to play defense in general. I wouldn't have done it, but to play maybe arguably the hardest position on the defensive side of the ball, just let them kind of, get their lumps, because if the Colts have the 5th worst secondary this year, honestly, what does it truly matter? If they get their lumps out and can learn now going forward, and again, kind of like Anthony Richardson, you hope kind of after a rough year, kind of, again, just slowly improve each year and slowly build. That's exactly what you're looking for. So you look at guys to credit to Destin Adams, put this list out there of notable free agents. You guys look at some big names: Byron Jones, Marcus Peters, Casey Hayward, Fabian Moreau, Eli Apple. I bet 85% of fans listening to this right now have heard at least one of the 2 of those guys. They're popular household names. But with that said, they would do nothing to help this team going forward. They would eat up a roster spot. They would eat up a starting spot, play here for a year, leave, because by the time the Colts are trying to get competitive in 2 or 3, 4 years, they won't be on the roster. And if anything, they'll stunt the growth of these young corners on the team that are all trying to get some playing time. Speaking of which, George, since you're at practice today, who was kind of taking over Isaiah's reps, and who was I know it's OTA, so still a long way to go, but at least to kind of get an idea. And with Brent's out as well, it's kind of a mishmash, but who's kind of getting a lot of burn today?
It's been a mishmash every time we've been out there, because Brent's obviously hasn't been working the whole year, and really Rodgers wasn't out there much, at least not that we can recall, even before this happened. So, looking out there today, you had Dallas Flowers on the field, you had Darrell Baker on the field. They were getting a lot of run, with that first team. But again, Brent's is going to factor into this. Darius Rush is going to factor into this. I think Tony Brown's an interesting case here because I think people go to his name a lot because of he's the most experienced guy after Kenny Moore in that group. But I think I think they like him in that backup nickel spot, which is an important position on this team too. And so I'm not sure how that'll work. I would expect in the base defense, you'll probably see Kenny Moore and Juju Brents mostly. And then when they go into nickel, which they're going to be in more often than the base, it's today's NFL. They're probably being dime more often than they'll be in the base for that matter. Then you're going to see whoever that third guy is. But to me, if that's a competition between Baker and Rush and Flowers, there's nothing wrong with that. Let those guys, like you said, let them earn it and let them make their mistakes. And if they end up growing out of this, we've said all year long, if this team's better in December or the 2 games they'll play in January than they were in September, no matter what the record was, it's probably a win. It's a step forward. If you feel like you've got guys at that position who you can count on moving forward, then the only way you're going to find that out is get them out there and play. Looking at that list, I mean, the guy that stands out right away is Hayward because he's been in Gus Bradley's defense before and he's got some experience. But he's another guy at his age, probably more of a slot guy. I don't know you're going to want him on the outside a lot. So I think I'm taking him right off the top because he does have that experience. Probably go down that list and it's the same way every way. There's something probably very quickly, or they wouldn't still be available right now.
True.
And so why not go with the young guys, see what you've got, learn what they can do. Yeah, you're going to take some lumps, but that's going to be happening in a lot of places on the field right now. And, I just think it's one of those situations where if you've got the right guys and they get through it down the road, it could really pay off.
That's the thing, right? If they stink this year and we're seeing just the secondary get torched, but come 2024, 2025, they've learned, they've grown together, and now all of a sudden the Colts have a really experienced up-and-coming secondary. 2023 is worth it, George, and that's like I could not agree more, which is why we keep on talking about the record in 2023 not mattering whatsoever. I think you're right. If they're playing better ball in December and January than they were September, that's the biggest win of the season without a doubt. And obviously, a big part of them playing better in December and January is going to be due to, of course, Anthony Richardson, who, George, had a rough, inconsistent practice today, but I do think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. I'll explain why first, or I should say after, but I want to hear your thoughts first, since you, again, with your own eyes, were able to be there at practice today and see it. What did you like from Richardson, and where are the areas that you saw him kind of struggle in and have some lows?
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing, we talk about watching the drills, before they get going, the ones that keep ending up on Twitter and going viral. There's an absolute climb that we've seen there from rookie minicamp now. He was hitting the net again on the drill. It was in the middle. It wasn't on the edge like it was, but he was 1 for 2 on that. The same drill that went viral this last time. And then they've got the one that got me was they've got this giant, I think I talked about before, it's almost like a chimney net that they're throwing longer balls into. It's elevated. And so it's almost looks like a chimney. There's a circular opening and the net goes all the way down to the ground. And so you're throwing from deeper back and it's a higher target. And the first couple of weeks we saw him, he was really struggling with that. He was mad at himself too. He was getting angry and trying to get after it. Every week's been more and more dialed in. Today, the first one hit the outer rim, which is almost harder than making it, and knocked the whole net so it flipped backwards. And then after that, right in. And I just think you're seeing more and more in that. So he's obviously coming along in a lot of fundamentals, which is important. The pass he had to Brashad Perriman in 7-on-7, probably the best throw he's had out of practice we've been at. It was a deep ball. Steichen kind of talked about it. Someone asked him about it in between the gambling questions after practice. He was near the sideline. He had to throw it over a defender, which was Nick Cross. Perriman made a nice catch right at the sideline. It would have been 60-plus yard touchdown. Might have been 70. Hard to tell where they're at from our angle, but they were definitely inside their own 40. Whether it was 35 or 30, I can't tell you, but it was as long as 70, definitely over 60, exactly where the ball needed to be. And I think we've seen that with him on a deep ball. It's on his tape. But that was the best throw he's made that we've seen live. Now, granted, we've seen a third of his throws, so There's a lot missing here. But then they get in that team drill. And I love these 2-minute drills. For one thing, one of the things I've been asking myself a lot of this offseason is, what did I miss last year? Why were we still so high on this team? What was going on that should have been a red flag that maybe was overlooked? One of the things that really stuck out to me, these 2-minute drives, which Steichen seems to do at the end of every practice, which I think is good. At least everyone we've been at. Again, 1/3 of them, but everyone we've been at, it's ended with a 2-minute drive. Anytime the ball was moving in a live situation, whether it was 2-minute drill or they were just doing a regular drive, I can't remember the offense scoring a touchdown. I can't remember them finishing those drives off. There were a few field goals. There were a couple of punts. There was turnover here and there, but I cannot remember them completing it. So I think these drives are important in that kind of mind, because it certainly played out that way during the regular season. You saw the inconsistency from the offense when you finally got there.
Yeah.
It's not a full game. It's taking one drive. If I pulled one drive out of any game, I could probably find a bad one. And so that you got to take that. All of this needs context. But I do like those 2-minute drills. There's a little bit of pressure. The clock's running. They're calling timeouts. There's obviously not live hitting. He's not facing a live pass rush. But again, they moved down the field pretty well. And then this time, last week, it stalled inside the 20. This time, it started to stall when they got past the 50, around the 30 or so. I think he was 3 of his first 4 on that drive, or at least 2 of his first 3. Ends up being 3 of 7. 2 of them should have been intercepted, and they were in Tony Brown's hands. He just couldn't hold on to it. The last one in the end zone in particular, we thought it was intercepted, and he just came up and didn't have the ball. But that's a learning process. It's part of, and I think especially the red zone, where I've been told that's where he's had his most challenges right now. And from the 2 times we've seen him, it's where he's had his most challenges. I would expect that to be the case for any rookie, honestly. And then also in that red zone area, you don't have Jonathan Taylor right now. He's not even on the field. Even if he was, you're not running the ball. It's not going to be a realistic situation. And you're not using his running ability. That last play was 4th and 2 at the 4. There's probably a good chance his legs are going to get involved in a regular season game. But now you want to see what he can do, and, forced one in there and paid a price. That's part of the growing process, I think, for a rookie. That's something that we're going to see from him during the season, and I think it's good for him to go through those things now.
So you just highlighted the best pass he's thrown so far in the offseason. That's 65, 70-yarder down the field to brand new receiver Brashad Perryman. And then again, now the second practice in a row that you've been able to see where the red zone, especially kind of in enemy territory or opponent territory, where the offense kind of starts to screech to a halt. And that's where, again, he's making some tough decisions, some inaccuracies as well. And I think those, in a weird way, it's good that he's struggling now, because it almost, again, reinforces what fans should expect this season. And I think part of last year, I think you just hit on the head too. Part of last year was, you hear Matt Ryan's leadership abilities. You hear Matt Ryan barking at players and telling them to be in the right spot. And it was a lot of positivity. Then all of a sudden the season came and it's like, this offense sucks. Like, they can't move the ball. They can't block anybody. And it's just a good reminder of, well, yes, some of the videos can go viral of Anthony Richardson hitting good targets and making 70-yard passes down the field. The reality is, you got to remember, there's a reason why he fell to 4. And there's a reason why there's even a debate in the Colts room of whether he should be taken or not. Like, we've had it on the pod. Should they take Anthony Richardson, kind of him, Will Levis, him versus CJ Stroud, him versus Bryce Young, in part because inconsistency. And that's what you're going to get. It's not going to be pretty whatsoever. And you know what, George, too, it's also not going to be one of those things where in year 1, it's going to be building off each other in a, you got to help me out here. Sorry. You're the wordsmith. Going,
That's me.
Linear. It's not going to be in a linear direction where he's going to be better in game 2 than he was in game 1 and game 3 compared to game 2. He could ball out and have an insane opener against the Jaguars. And then he could easily stink up the joint in week 2 against the Texans. Like, it's going to be, I think, a roller coaster up and down all season long. And I think just in this small sample size of one OTA practice here in early June kind of showed you that. He can absolutely drop a dime 70 yards down the field. Also struggle in the red zone with some tighter window throws and be up and down. It's just a good reminder of what to expect, especially in year number 1. And it's a reminder that it's okay. That's like, this is the Colts drafted him knowing this is going to be the case. I think it almost helps to kind of reinforce a little bit, so fans don't get too crazy, reinforce what to expect for this season, where hopefully it's exciting, hopefully it's more good than bad, but there's going to be a lot of up and down.
What was our motto for the pod? Manage expectations.
Manage expectations.
Subtitle the pod this year, the Blue Horseshoe Pod. Manage expectations. That's where you're at. And look, Minshew struggled in the red zone today too, and he was really mad at himself because he bought a little bit of time and had a wide open Ashton Doolin and just threw the ball in the dirt. It was just he didn't get enough on it, and he knew it. He was banging himself in the helmet coming off the field. He understood what had happened, but the point is, 4-year veteran missed too, so it's not the end of the world here in June. Richardson did have a shot in the end zone that was low as well. He threw one low. It was a tight window. It wasn't as egregious as the one that Minshew had thrown, but he missed a shot at a touchdown as well there. Which that happened last week. He got the ball there late. I think, again, that's part of this process. We talked about it before. The biggest thing he's missing is experience. And today he gained experience. Right. He saw some looks. He has some ideas. Maybe learn not to force a ball against Tony Brown. There's things that you can work on moving forward. The one thing in both those red zone drives that I think was apparent that I think you can take away last week and this week is getting down the field initially. A lot of short and intermediate throws that he was hitting on, and that's something we were really worried about coming in. So again, not live. The receivers aren't really, they're not getting that physical with them. There's coverage, but you're not as physical as you would be with pads on, obviously, when you run around out there with shorts on, and he's not facing a pass rush, not a legitimate one at this point. That he knows he can't get hit, if nothing else. That's in the back of his mind. But also, you're not seeing his full skill set yet because he's not running, because he's wearing the red jersey, and it's kind of cheating when the quarterback takes off, which Minshew did have a big gain during his drive on a long run, and EJ Speed kind of had a funny answer about that after practice. Like, hey, if that was live, I was going to walk him down.
It's easy to scramble in an 11-on-11 where no one's wearing pads. The quarterback wearing a red jersey. I would say you could run it and get a 20-yard gain every time.
One of my favorite training camp memories of all time, early in Luck's career, he took off running in a drill. I think they were just outside the red zone, and Corey Redding was playing defensive end. He just yells at him, "Hey, 12, you got a red jersey on. You can't do that." It's just a funny thing to see how, because defense, these guys got to the league because they're competitive on both sides of the ball.
Oh, yeah.
Offense was, over on the sideline cheering on their side. The defense gets a little angry at times out there, and they should. That's what it's about. It's fun to watch. That's why I like those live, the closest they get to live. Anytime the ball is moving and they're respotting it after the play this time of year, I like those drills because I think there's a little bit of the juices get flowing a little bit, and there's a little bit you can take away from it more than, when it's 3rd and 5 for 12 straight plays. Right.
Or you're just throwing at an immovable net and doing a few footwork drills over and over and over again. One thing I want to bring up here, George, kind of wrap up the pod. Second straight media OTA, where Richardson was strictly on the second team and Gardner Minshew was strictly running with the ones. No alternate, like we saw in the first OTA practice. But this is tough because it's the right thing to do. I'm not criticizing the Colts for being overly cautious in June. Absolutely, you should. But it is a little frustrating when you look at especially who was available at practice today and even the first 2 practices as well, where, again, no Michael Pittman Jr., no Alec Pierce, no Josh Downs, no Jelani Woods. I know he was out of the mix last year, but no Alec Ogletree, especially if he can kind of, develop. Maybe he'll be another weapon this year as well. So just receivers, tight ends wise, those are what, George? 5. I don't know if I said Josh Downs enough. If I didn't, Josh Downs well. 5 out of the maybe top 6 targets. 5 out of the top 7 targets that Richardson could be thrown to this season. Again, it's the right thing to do because everyone's in a different injury spot. But it is a little frustrating. We're talking about getting Anthony Richardson reps and getting him experience. He's getting the reps now. The only issue is he's not getting the reps with the people he'll be playing with, hopefully week 1 and beyond.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why the first team, second team reps are not a big deal right now. About the only thing that's changing is the line in front of them at this point. And so you throw into basically the same guys because the receiving core is thin right now with the injuries. But yeah, I think it's definitely, you would rather have that time with Michael Pittman where they're building the rapport and they're getting it going. But at the same time, we talked about it last week or the week before that he keeps making me look up numbers on receivers because it's somebody I've never heard of. Rashad Perriman's out there for the first time today, and he's got a perfect bomb to him. So there's some thought that maybe Richardson doesn't need a whole ton of time with a receiver, that he can pick that up quickly. But I think it all goes hand in hand over time. I just want experience. I guess the upshot of it for him now is if there's injuries during the year, he's got some guys he's comfortable with. He may have to go all the way back to June for those reps, but he's getting some guys he's comfortable with. He's thrown to before. It's the one thing that I got to give you credit. Shane Steichen more or less confirmed your theory, your conspiracy theory from the first spot this week.
From Monday.
People were asking about, what do you read into the fact that then she was getting the ones, second straight practice, and then she got all the ones, and Richardson was working with the twos, and Steichen said, well, it's just the way the practices that you guys have been at. And if you were here on another day, it might look a little different. So I wonder, because the one practice we did see where they split, again, we're not out there next week. It may be a better answer because we'll be there for 3 days. I wonder if it is in a situation right now where one practice it's split, one practice Minshew's with the ones, and the other practice Richardson's with the ones. I don't know, but perhaps that's the rotation they're on right now.
Well, definitely, like I said, get a better answer when minicamp's here next week. You can get 3 straight days out there. But I'm glad we got something right, George, in the sense that it's smart. Again, if you want to kind of quell the hype a little bit, bury Richardson with the twos, especially now when it really ones and twos don't matter because it's the same guys you're throwing to. Because Pittman's out, Pierce is out, Downs is out, Jelani Woods is out. So a lot of the guys you'd be repping with anyway are not even on the field. So it truly is almost irrelevant. Like I said, outside the line you're playing in front of, which they're not blocking anyone. So really, again, that does not matter that much anyway. But there is obviously a difference between throwing to Malik Turner and throwing to Michael Pittman Jr. So hopefully, fingers crossed, sooner or later, they'll be out on the field. Obviously, Shane Steichen does not get into anything injury-wise. Is there any reason, outside of just exercising extreme caution in early June, is there any reason for concern, you would say, George, with any of these receivers or tight ends in terms of their availability for, let's just say, training camp?
Yeah, he's saying no right now. So, that's all we've got to go on. It's interesting because with Frank Reich, we used to joke, everybody was always progressing. And so if you ever said somebody wasn't progressing, then it was a serious problem. The person might be dead. We're sure, you knew their career may be over. With Steichen so far, everything is a little injury. Today, Alec Pierce has a little foot. And last week, it was a little hip for Michael Pittman Jr. So, it doesn't sound like serious right now. I think obviously with Ogletree and Jonathan Taylor and some of those guys coming off injury, that's just extreme caution. That's right. That's kind of normal operating procedure around the league. I think go anywhere and you'll see the guys coming off of surgeries aren't on the field this time of year. He said today point blank that Pierce could have practiced. It was just caution. So that we know that was the case with him. It sounds like it's close to the case with Michael Pittman Jr. The other week he was out fishing after practice, so he's not in any kind of grave pain and, not getting extra therapy or anything like that. But you never know. I think it's one of those things that you kind of have to wait till training camp. Guys missing in training camp is still not the end of the world, right. But it's certainly there's more concern to it now than there is, right now. Literally a voluntary workout.
True. Obviously, trying to build chemistry is paramount, but like I said, also not unnecessarily pushing it in June, 3 months away from week 1. Like I said, it is being smart, but at least hopefully right now, according to Steichen, it does appear that nothing serious with any of these guys is happening, which obviously for training camp and to, get everyone kind of on the same page as quick as possible, that's obviously a really good sign as well. Really quickly before we sign off here, George, I want to finish with this. What number did Perriman wear? What's he got?
9. He's number 9. So
Ooh,
just
I
took
kind of
Jacob
like
Eason's
that.
number, threw it right out there. Forgetting about his history with this team, just throw it right out. Took Nick Foles' number right off his bat.
Yeah, jeez.
Damn it on
Do
Rashad
they even
Perriman.
have the Foles off the nameplate? I mean, jeez.
I mean, we're not in a locker room, so I can't confirm it. Those things go fast. That's one thing I learned early in this
No
league. Like,
respect.
man, they're just ready to move on. Everything moves at a lightning pace. The guy's been here for 20 years. The day he's retired or the day he's traded, that is gone. Name tag is out the door.
Undrafted rookie. Here's 18. Go take it.
Yeah, well, not quite that, but
Yeah,
there are a few sacred numbers, 18 and 88. I haven't seen much of those.
that is true. That is true. And I'm sure 87 with Reggie too as well. That is for sure. I do like 9 though.
What one thing they watch, when we get into training camp and the fans are allowed to go in there for free. I don't know if they're going to still do it. One thing that's been nice so far in these practices, they've got T-shirts that they haven't had in the past. The guys who aren't practicing have T-shirts on with their names and numbers on the back. So
Wow.
that's very helpful. From a media standpoint, I'm all for this. This is a trend we want to see.
Shane Steichen, media friendly. Not with answers, of course, but maybe player availability. That is for sure.
One more thing, it's not media related, but I don't know. Maybe this is interesting. Maybe it's not. It was to me. I've never seen it before. So, people probably know. You watch Ted Lasso, you've seen this. It happens in NFL locker rooms all the time. Coaches come in, they put their little sayings up in the locker room, right? Painting the wall. Steichen's words, relentless resiliency, are in the end zones on the practice field, just like Colts would be on the regular. I've not seen that before.
Really? So
relentless. One end zone says resiliency. Maybe it's interesting to people. Maybe it's not. Saw it today. Thought I'd throw it out there. It wasn't there earlier this year. They're now painted in the end zone. I thought that was unique. Something I hadn't seen before.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never heard of that. It's almost like a college gimmick in a way that's just like it to reinforce the message. Maybe training camp, we'll see that in the end zones as well when the fans kind of come out there. All right. Relentless.
Something to look out for.
I like it. Okay. Hopefully the message is hitting home. Good for Shane.
There's 2 more end zones we couldn't see from where we're at, so maybe they had other words, but I know the ones closest to us were relentless and resiliency.
I bet so, because I feel like 2 phrases or 2 words, I feel like coaches have like core pillars. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, from the opening press conference, I think it was 4 pillars, core pillars Steichen had. Please don't have to recite them.
Character. I'm guessing one of the other end zones says character, and I can't remember what his other. It was relentlessness.
Preparation?
Yeah, preparation. That's
preparation.
I bet the other 2 end zones say character and preparation, but I have never seen that one before. They're on the wall in the locker room all the time. They're painted on there. Every time there's been a head coaching change, that kind of design changes, and you see whatever the new guy's emphasizing. It was a whole quote. I can't remember, but when Frank Reich came in, there was a whole quote, a long quote up there that was his kind of philosophy. So in the end zone, I thought that was unique.
If preparation is one of the, in the other end zone, hopefully no prankster comes in there and puts an H at the end.
It also got to be a small font, right? That's a big word to put
big
in
word.
The end zone.
Well, they fit into Indianapolis in one end zone. So those are the experts that we do need to figure out the perfect font size to make sure those 10 plus letter words, those big bonus words, can fit in the, was it 53 and a half or 53 and a third wide end zone?
Yep. Yeah. So new stuff, new era out there, new guy in charge, and
new phrases.
Giant work in the end zones. So
I like it. That is a good way, George, to cap off OTAs. Very good way to end it right there. Why not just live schedule the show again? Peel back the curtain. Everyone in the audience, we're all one here. Minicamp next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So George, we'll be back on Tuesday.
Yep.
All right.
This work.
We will be back on Tuesday. Break down the first official Shane Steichen mandatory full team practice. That's exciting. That is exciting. We'll see how much improvement Anthony Richardson has from today through next week. We'll tell you all, we'll see. Maybe Shaq Leonard, we'll see if he's going to venture on out there as well. But now the voluntary portions of the offseason are in the bag. Now we go ahead towards the mandatory sessions as we get closer and closer to training camp. So Best way to stay up to date with everything Blue Horseshoe Pod, and in case another unexpected story does break, this is why subscribing and downloading to the Blue Horseshoe Pod is the perfect way to stay up to date. Get us on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Pod. Get us wherever you get your podcasts. Bright blue logo, Blue Horseshoe Podcast. We will be back on Tuesday after day number 1 of minicamp, so make sure you stay tuned. But between now and then, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you on Tuesday right here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.